Isaac Sarason is a skilled hacker, formerly employed by British Telecom-Sprint. When his health failed, Isaac did the only thing he could think of. He ran. A burqa-wearing doctor known as Fatima took pity on Isaac and helped him make his way to the mysterious Star X line. At the end of all hope, they found the Star X line and the slim promise that the enigmatic beings behind the Star X could save Isaac from the implants which destroyed his life. What do you do when those who saved you have recorded everything you are? What do you do when your every action is tracked by the Keylogger? Colbyjack.net is proud to present Firmware Keylogger, the third installment of Firmware by Colbytrax. Episode 50. He guided me onto a series of narrowing streets, which smelt of alcohol and urine. I thought about what would be untenable and what math had to do with it. Then I realized what he meant. Your memories of this time will be gone in a century. With every device removed from your network, you lose a piece of your mind. I said as I stepped over a sailor curled up in a doorway. Her hat was rolled up beneath her head, and from the state of her pockets, it was apparent the night parasites had relieved her of her wallet. I have long thought of my memory as that of a holographic chrysanthemum, each piece containing a mapping of the whole, data infinitely, redundantly backed up. Musashi stopped and examined the fallen sailor. He checked her breathing before prodding her. She didn't respond. Musashi stood up, shook his head, and resumed walking down the alley. The sound of Bloody Harvest's newest single pounded out of a door somewhere ahead. I turned back toward the drunken sailor. She had curled into a fetal ball. Is she okay? No. She has alcohol poisoning. From the smell. Too much sake. Musashi said as we passed the door emitting the classic sounds of North American anti-agrarian rock. I turned back toward the drunken woman and found I couldn't see her in the press of traffic in the narrow alley. So, you're just leaving her to live or die as luck might have it? No, Musashi answered. I have alerted the appropriate bureaucracies of her peril. She has already been retrieved by a hahakuma. A hahakuma? It sounds fun, whatever it is. I said as we drifted past doors leading into some of the smallest bars I have ever seen. Many had seating for only a half dozen along a short bar with the bartender centered behind it. I had a closet in my old place at Aquaterra with more square footage than these bars. Musashi smiled. I like to believe they are fun, but that is not their purpose. The phrase translates as Mother Bear. In your city, it would be called a CMA, though I think that phrase does a disservice to the hahakuma. What will this Mother Bear do to the sailor? I asked. Do to? Musashi asked. It will not do to anything. It will carry the sailor home, in this case to a sailor's hotel in Chiba. Musashi looked upwards as if he were remembering something on the tip of his tongue. The Toyoko in Chiba, Makuhari, to be exact. She should be okay. The hahakuma will stay with her until she is past the danger. Isn't Chiba? I started to ask. On the other side of the harbor? Musashi finished. It is. Close to 50 kilometers from here to be exact. What's that in a real measurement system? I asked with a smile. I already knew it was about 30 miles. I really don't know why I tried to aggravate him, but it seemed the right thing to do. In hindsight, I think it had to do with something I heard in a movie when I was in high school. There was this enigmatic bodyguard who fought the hero for no other reason than the belief that you do not truly know someone until you fight them. I know how insane that sounded in retrospect, but at the time it seemed like the right thing to do. Musashi rose to the bait. Real measurement system? You want me to use a real measurement system? Like what? Like the ancient English measurement system? A measurement system which isn't even used in the country it was invented in? but persists in that country's most annoying former colony, and only there? That'd be nice, I answered. What would also be nice, other than speaking in a measurement system which makes sense, would be you speaking less like the enigmatic senpai and more like the voice of the Nipponese network. I know you aren't all nice and spiritual. All this saving drunk sailors from their drink doesn't seem to be the job you were made for. It seems to be a complete waste of time. Musashi turned on me, and I realized that foot traffic had ceased in our section of the alley. I thought I caught sight of a short cone with the head of an anime bear directing traffic away from the patch or street Musashi and I occupied. You seemed concerned when I walked away from the sailor without doing anything you could see, he responded. I was, I said, though I would have called the police. Called the police for what? Musashi asked. Public drunkenness. A fine a night in the drunk tank would teach her not to get blackout drunk again, I answered. Shock crossed Musashi's face. Damn, these bodies were detailed. I could feel Musashi's disbelief radiating from his entire being. Arrest someone for drinking too much? That is the craziest thing I have ever heard, Musashi responded. Well, if you weren't running a nanny state where you hold everyone's hands and covered for their mistakes, you might see that people won't learn unless they have to pay for their sins, I answered. Musashi shook his head and smiled. From the look on his face, I saw that he had found something to use against me. I braced for his response, knowing I had earned it by being a consummate dick. Everyone should pay for their sins? He asked. He pursed his lips and tried not to smile. Even washed-up hackers with infected implants who were too stupid to go to a doctor? There it was. He had just confirmed he knew more about me than he was letting on. The why I had thought fighting the living embodiment of Nippon was the proper way to learn such things was beyond my understanding. I blamed it on being a scion of Isaac Sarason. It seemed to work for everything else. Who told you about me? I asked. My voice was suddenly serious and controlled without a hint of malice. My boy, I don't think you understand what you have done, Musashi answered as he attempted to regain his composure. Do you think you are the first of your kind to wash up on my shores? I didn't, I started. He wasn't planning on allowing me to continue. You aren't. Musashi circled around me, his kasa set low on his forehead. I caught a gleam of light in his eyes, light which came from within, and I knew that I was seeing the real Musashi at last. What you need to ask yourself is why you are still functioning, why I allowed you access to the most powerful research server in Nippon, why I optimized your shitty code to properly utilize the capabilities of the CS-54L. You should ask yourself all these things. I watched Musashi circle. I glanced up and down the street. Bare-headed cones were blocking access to our section of alley. A door opened next to us. A trio of drunken salary women stumbled out into the space between us. I stepped back. The last of the trio stumbled into Musashi and laughed as she grabbed the neck of his saffron-yellow robes and planted a rough kiss upon his lips. I heard her drunk whisper something to Musashi. Something which sounded Nipponese. Something which sounded Nipponese. Something which caused him to blush a bright red before his anger overcame him. Musashi barked something at the drunken woman, who had a hand down his robes and another cupping a butt cheek. She had pulled his robes open, revealing his undergarments and the fact that the avatars we were in were anatomically correct. The compatriots of the author of the drunken sexual assault on Musashi started cheering on their brazen buddy. It was at this moment, when she had one hand down his underwear and the other pulling his face to hers, that humming cones with bare heads surrounded us. The cheering salary women came to their senses, now that the strange bare cones had appeared, and proceeded to pull their wannabe rapist away from Musashi. Musashi's assailant made kissing faces and groping motions as she was escorted away by her associates and a phalanx of the strange bare cones. Musashi began readjusting his kimono, hiding his anatomical correctness between layers of white fabric. When he had finally gotten his outer yellow saffron robes adjusted, he said gravely, "We have tarried here too long." He moved rapidly through the alleys. Before us moved the bear cones. Behind us moved the bear cones. Nowhere along the path did we come in contact with another human being. We were in a bubble of space that one associates with presidents on the move, or emperors, for that matter. I ran to keep up with Musashi's stride. He rolled along with the gait of one long used to fast marches and sudden departures. "What happened? Where are we going?" I asked as I chased after Musashi at a pace I never could have achieved when I was Isaac. "That woman assaulted me," Musashi answered. "Yeah, I saw that. Why didn't you push her away or strike her? You were within your rights," I said as we came into a wide open space, nestled between the low maze of taverns behind us and the LED-animated residential towers around us. At the center of the space was a one-story green-tiled building lit with tasteful recessed lighting. Incense smoke filled the air, and the space had a feeling of a place recently evacuated. I had seen buildings like this before. Well, not actually seen, even though I had viewed them before. This was so confusing. I had seen structures like the one I and Musashi stood before. I had seen them in movies and games, though I had never been in the presence of the actual structures before. What I was standing before was a shrine, an honest-to-God Nipponese Shinto shrine. It was exactly like the ones I had seen in Yakuza Sunset, Duel at Hanazona Jinja, and Kaneda Adelstein's Ran. A decent remake of the classic Kurosawa retelling of King Lear as a Judageki epic. What had set Adelstein's interpretation apart was that he had turned it from a tale of ancient kingdoms into a war between gangs on the mean streets of Shinjuku in Edo. It was then that it dawned on me. This was Hanazona Jinja, or Hanazona Shrine, as it was called in the dubs I had watched. Over by that tree is where the Yakuza Oyabun Hidetora divided up her control of Shinjuku between her three daughters, Teruo, Jiryo, and Saburiro. It was on those steps over there where Oyabun Hidetora attempted seppuku and discovered her sword was broken. I turned and looked back from where we had come and realized it was down that alley that the insane Hidetora and her fool Kayome fled into the Golden Gi. The Golden Gi with its narrow alleys and even narrower bars. It was then I knew that if I looked long and hard enough, I could find the corner where Teruo was gunned down by Jiryo's lieutenant Kurogane, and the house where Saburo found her mother, Oyabun Hidetora, lost in the depths of her insanity, and where Jiryo's assassin killed her sister, Saburo. It was all out there somewhere, and it could be found. I believed this was the first time I realized that the places I had known from entertainments actually existed. It was such a simple truth, but I think it was at this point everything changed. I looked toward the bare-faced security devices and realized they had changed shape again. Those bear things, they're Hahakuma, right? Musashi nodded as he walked toward the steps leading into the shrine. Our presence here is ruining a lot of people's nights. I asked as I caught up to him. Why do you care? They made the mistake of planning to be here tonight. Shouldn't they have to deal with their disappointment? Musashi asked as we came to a stop at the top of the shallow steps leading toward the red, white, and gold facade of the Hanazono Shrine. He turned and looked toward the faces of his people being denied access to a rare open space by the security apparatus of their government. Even if the officers resembled anime bears with cone-shaped bodies, it did not make the seizing of a treasured shrine by two angst-filled AIs right. Musashi shook his head and said, Come away with me. We will take new forms in a new place. Musashi stood still, his face devoid of an animating force. A soul, if you wish. A moment later, I received an invite into another environment. I took it and found myself standing on an alien landscape. Below me, the world fell away into blackness deeper than any I had experienced before. Not even the darkness of space on the far side of the moon was as deep as this. I think for darkness to have any meaning, there has to be a feeling of infinity. Without the feeling, infinity is simply large. This felt infinite, which meant it was finite, which also meant it had meaning. Far in the distance I saw a smudge of light which seemed to throb and shift in the cold air. I turned toward Musashi. He was beside me, appearing as he had on the streets of Edo, as I knew he would. His kasa was pushed back. His saffron robes were properly arranged over his white kimono. He appeared relaxed. He spoke softly. "We are in the darkness before the dawn. Soon, Tsukiyomi will rise from the sea. He'll be followed by his sister, Amaterasu, who will use her great fires to hide Tsukiyomi from sight. It has been this way since Tsukiyomi killed Ukimochi for creating food in a disgusting manner." "What are we talking about?" I asked. "The moon and sun and the poetry surrounding them. We stand upon the most sacred mountain in Nippon and watch the most ancient story being played out as it is every 29 days since Tsukiyomi, the moon, killed Ukimochi, the goddess of food. Not a very nice move, and it really pissed off his sister, the sun, Amaterasu." Musashi said, "We stand here on Mount Fuji. On Daiobi Jukunichi Yayoi, in the 75th year of the Shinka era, late in the hour of the tiger, waiting for the moon to rise above the mouth of Edo harbor. The sun will rise soon after, rounding out his attempt at reconciliation, as it has since the slaying of Ukimochi." "What does this have to do with anything?" I asked. Musashi had returned to his enigmatic Spirit of Nippon persona. "Nothing and everything," he said with a smile which told me he knew how much his act was bothering me. "It is the way of myth and legend. They can serve as frames for events or as guides, but many times they end up locking us on a path we don't want."
Firmware Keylogger begins where Firmware Proxy ends, which in turn followed on the heels of Firmware Hijacked. Firmware Hijacked, Proxy, and Keylogger are all available in ebook versions from our store at shop.Colbyjack.net, Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com, and Smashwords.com. Just search for Colbytrax. That's Colbytrax. I'm the only one. A complete audiobook version of both Firmware, Hijacked, Proxy, and soon Keylogger is available for download through our shop as well. If you don't need any stuff, but would like to support our work, drop on by Colbyjack.net and hit the pretty little donate button conveniently located on the right-hand side of the blog roll. Firmware Keylogger is released under a Creative Commons, non-commercial, attribution, share-alike license. Do what you want with it. Just don't sell it, and always tell people where it came from. If you received this from a friend and want more information about Colbyjack.net and our split personality website, just drop on over to Colbyjack.net and select either the audio or visual side. The audio side carries our podcast, while the visual side carries our writings. Whichever side catches your fancy is fine with us. We're of two minds about the whole thing anyway. I do mostly Twitter, so if you do the tweets and want to follow me, I'm Colbytrax. That's Colbytrax. Thank you once again. Remember to be fabulous and have a wonderful week.